Doctor-assisted suicide. Is it really about saving dignity or saving money? We're going to be talking about that on the Woman to Woman show. I'm Luann. Come on and join us.
My humanity found once perfection is self, and when love always abounds, then I'll reach out for your help. Saying I fall down, saying I fall down, saying I fall down, saying I fall down. In the stillness of my soul, where nobody knows, containing all my fears, containing all my tears.
Hi, welcome back to the show. And we're here visiting again today with Dr. Bill Toffler, National Director of Physicians for Compassionate Care. And we were having a kind of a lively discussion, and there's so much to say about this law in Oregon that I want people to understand. You're working day and night to educate people, and not only in your work, I have to say, but in your spare time as well.
Right. It's become somewhat of an avocation. And,
yeah, I think it is.
And it's a gift to be on the show to have an opportunity to do that.
You're so nice to do it, too. I got to tell people, he's here on one of the last nice days of October, sunny days. You've been flying all over the country, and you gave up a Saturday for us because somebody out there may need to hear this information, and you're here to make sure as many people as possible do.
You're right. It's important. I mean, you could not be hyperbolic by saying it's a matter of life and death.
It is a matter of life and death. I like that. And you know, thank goodness I can still say this today, but I'm going to say I believe God orders our steps. And I really hope and pray that the person out there right now watching this show is going to get the message they need. I want to talk about we talked about the issues of people being afraid they're going to suffer pain, and they don't want that.
Right.
They don't want to be a burden.
Right.
They don't want to lose control.
Right.
And these are all absolutely things everybody shares.
Right.
You and I all share it. There's a way to combat all of those issues and not kill yourself. And we're going to call it for what it is, because it's not being called killing yourself. They're euphemisms. And,
well, they're trying not to. I think you're using the King's English. That's correct. I mean, that's what you do when you take a massive overdose of a barbiturate, a sleeping medication, and you take a massive overdose, and you know you're going to end your life. That's killing yourself. It's suicide. They're trying very hard to euphemize it, to make it more palatable to people who don't think below the surface, don't look below the veneer. They're trying to say things like it's physician-aided death or physician-assisted dying. Well, I believe in physician-assisted dying. I don't believe in giving massive overdoses to patients.
Right.
It's very clear there's a distinct bright line between those two acts.
Right, and this was essentially sold to the people of Oregon. And,
it's like Hollywood. You take a little pill and you slip off to a peaceful sleep. Now, it's important for people to know that overdoses aren't always pretty. And the most recent publicized case was Lavelle Svart, and she actually took the overdose, and she did slip off into sleep within a matter of minutes, we're told. But it took 5 hours before she died, as she has, the very prolonged death. Now, in the case of David Pruitt, who was a man who took an overdose 2 years ago, he was asleep for 67 hours, and the first words out of his mouth were, "What the hell happened? I was supposed to be dead." Now, thank God, he didn't cause a brain injury by being in such a deep soporific state that his brain was injured. Because if you think back, historically, 31 years ago, Karen Ann Quinlan, a famous case that changed thinking about the right to die, had taken an overdose at a party, a 17-year-old at the time. And of course then she was brain damaged because of the deep comatose induction of her wakefulness by the overdose, had to be supported by a respirator. The parents fought successfully for the control to take the artificial futile support of the respirator away. Of course, it turned out she breathed on her own without the respirator for 10 more years, but she was severely brain damaged. And Luann, I think it's only a matter of time before a patient comes to this so-called compassionate choices without necessarily having a lethal prognosis. in terms of 3 months or 6 months, because we already have recorded cases of that.
Right.
They take an overdose that goes awry, they injure their brain, and rather than dying, they're disabled for the remainder of their life until they die naturally.
Oh,
and
we'll have to have a cure for that
well,
too, won't we? Yeah.
well, of
Where
course.
is it going to stop? Yeah.
And in the Netherlands, of course, the doctors laugh
lived.
at us. They laugh at us, and they don't generally do assisted suicide because they know it's not a very efficient way to end your life.
Right.
So they say the doctor needs to be standing by to deliver the coup de grace, if you will, and that's essentially ejection. Now, it was very hard for the so-called Hemlock Society or the Compassion and Choices people to sell the idea of doctors injecting things. That's a little too chilling, and that's why they lost the ballot measure in California. That's why they lost it in Washington State. And they learned from that experience that, gee, let's sell it to the voters as you just take this pill and you slip off to sleep.
Well, I want to talk about what I teased with was talking about cost. How expensive is it to care for a dead person?
Well, you know, assisted suicide, they didn't say that this would happen either. In fact, they denied that the tax dollars would be used for this. But under Care Oregon, under the Oregon Health Plan,
okay,
that's the welfare coverage for health services, it's 100% coverage. Assisted suicide has 100% coverage. Now, it's under the euphemism of pain management.
Oh, you're kidding.
And I suppose it is. If you eliminate the sufferer,
you're not in pain.
You're not in pain.
I guess that's true.
But it's a great way to fool the people about what's going on.
And fooling the people is all what it's about, isn't it?
Well, it certainly was to start with, because there were absolute distortions of the truth by people like Patty Rosen, who said to the regional voters of Oregon, I'm not a bad mother, but my daughter was in pain, and I gave her an overdose, and that ended her life and her suffering. Well, it turned out that the overdose didn't work. And Patty Rosen admitted this to a group of nurses at OHSU just days before the vote took place, that she had her daughter awaken after this, and her siblings, or the daughter's siblings, were, should we get a pillow and smother?
I've heard that brought up.
And Patty, apparently, knowing the problem that might cause psychologically, that you actually smother your sister with a pillow, said she hit a vein. Now, what are we talking about? If she had said that up front, that overdoses don't work, but instead the campaign was, show me the study that shows that overdoses don't work, denying the lived experience of the doctors who've been doing this for 25 years in the Netherlands.
This is chilling. I want you to talk about a great thing you explain on your website. What is the 5% rule that with Oregon Health Plan and Medicaid, Medicare patients? Tell what that means to people.
Sure. Well, I think you're referring to the fact that if you have cancer as a diagnosis, and some doctor judges that the care has less than 5% chance, the person has less than 5% chance of survival in a few years.
For 5 years.
Then you're not eligible for any care or even palliative care.
I don't believe this is actually happening right now in Oregon.
And you know, we have a line drawn with the 700 or so services, and while we pay 100% for assisted suicide, below the line are certain medications that would be helpful for palliative care and for pain management. They're not covered. And there's limitations to how much in-home help you can get. So if you don't get coverage for things that you need, much like the caller who called me saying I need assisted suicide because I'm not getting my pain addressed, well, if you don't get coverage, then you feel like calling the so-called Compassion and Choices folks for the recipe to end your life.
So you've seen it where people have called you and said, guess what? They won't cover my treatment.
Yes.
I'm all upset. I guess, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I mean, can you imagine for your loved one?
We've had calls from both in the state and outside the state. Again, people ignoring the fact that this was supposed to be limited to Oregonians. Of course, as we said with our previous segment, that, you know, how do you define yourself as an Oregonian? I say, I'm a resident of the state.
But the state of Oregon will say to that person, we'll pay for your death. We'll pay for the medicine.
They have. In fact, they got caught, their hand got caught in the cookie jars. They actually used federal funds at one point to pay for it, and that's totally illegal. There is a federal statute that says no Medicare dollars were not to be used. That wasn't what we had in mind when we were trying to take care of our seniors, was that we were going to off them. So they had to repay the federal government the money that they used.